From courageous kitties traveling thousands of miles to expensive horses running away, here are 10 pets that returned home after being lost. Basil. This horse made the news after an accident during an endurance race in Suffolk, England last year. When the rider of the then 12-year-old grey gelding fell from the saddle, the animal struck out on its own. The name of the horse is Basil Del Mulo. We think that sounds like a character from Zoolander, but never mind. He fled into the forest and disappeared for 33 hours. A major search operation was launched, which even included the RAF, police, and numerous helpers, even a drone. Basil was found in Thetford Forest, where people had been checking out hundreds of miles of terrain in an attempt to get him back. After much worry, the crazy clip-clopper was spotted and returned to his family. His owner was pretty relieved and surprised that he was uninjured after running through the forest. He apparently found a reservoir and some fresh grass, but they couldn't follow his footprints. His great escape actually made him quite famous. Following the incident at the King's Forest Spring Ride, you'd think Basil would be put off of racing. However, just weeks later, he was back on his hooves in an international endurance ride. He came 19th in the epic event at Royal Windsor, a stone's throw from Her Majesty the Queen. Give that horse a crown. Giggle Blizzard. A Florida feline went on an arduous journey in 2009. When Giggle Blizzard, and yes, that is his real name, disappeared, it left a hole in his owner's life. Not that she was short of animals, owning at the time an incredible 7 other cats plus a couple of canines for good measure. Still, this was clearly one special little furball. Reportedly, Giggle Blizzard was going for walks with dogs, so he's one tough cookie it seems, and he'd have to be, bearing in mind what happened. One day, his owner called everybody back home after letting them out, and he never came back. She searched all over the neighborhood and put an ad on Craigslist, but no news. After 11 days, with his owner no doubt going out of her mind with worry, he rocked up on her porch. It was Thanksgiving night, and she had a lot to be thankful for. So what took place over that agonizing week-and-a-half period? Poor Giggle Blizzard was involved in a nasty car accident where his back legs got squashed. I won't get into the details, but he dragged himself all the way home and after some operations lived to chase mice another day. At one point, his owner thought he'd been eaten by a vulture after seeing one with a whisker sticking out of its beak. Crazy stuff, sure, but we're pretty positive that Giggle Blizzard would have seen off such a feathery predator, no bother. The veterinary surgeon was able to save his legs, and Giggle Blizzard is quite the story of perseverance. Has anything ever happened to your cat? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you are new here. Reckless. This doggy tale is like something out of a movie. Prepare to go aww for the moving story of Reckless, the terrier pit bull. It opens with a dramatic scene in which New Jersey canine Reckless flees the family backyard during Superstorm Sandy in 2012. After months of looking, they made the painful decision to call off the search. Of course, it was only a matter of time before they figured a new dog might help mend their broken hearts. Enough time had passed, and really you've got to move on with these things, right? But when they went to the local animal shelter to pick one out in 2014, they found their perfect replacement, Reckless himself. Their home had been devastated by the storm all that time ago, but surely the most shattering thing was losing their precious pet. Having Reckless back in the family must have been a huge relief. Mother Nature sure does work in some mysterious ways. Hampshire horse. As you know, England loves its horses. We just talked about one 4-legged friend who ran into the forest. Here's another case where endurance racing and horses did not mix. The location this time is Leafy, Hampshire, and something called the Three Rivers Ride last year. Here's another horse that went missing. It happened on a Sunday morning when horse and rider reportedly had an unexpected parting of the ways. The mare was colored black and 10 years old enough to know better maybe. She also had what's described in the press as a white star, clearly one handsome-looking horse. The rider reported that the horse went missing at 11 a.m., but she was very distressed and asked not to be named. Anxious equine hunters didn't have long to wait as the missing animal turned up 24 hours later at a nearby car park. Wonder if she got a ticket. Joking aside, there was a big search underway for this rogue pet, and people were understandably upset. It all worked out right in the end though, with nay problems. See what we did there? The horse was unharmed and luckily made it back with injury. Kuzia. Just when you think you've seen the toughest kitty on the block, another one comes along to shatter your purring preconceptions. Kuzia is a Russian cat who got lost after his owners lost him while on holiday. Yep, you're traveling over 1,000 miles to a different part of the country, why not take the cat along, huh? Kuzia was mislaid in Alenyak, and eventually his heartbroken family had to go back to Yakutsk and leave him behind. Or so they thought. Kuzia wasn't going to let a little thing like being stranded miles from home stand in his way. This incredible feline found his way to the doorstep. To do this, he had to cross the wilds of Siberia. We've heard of the scenic route, but that's ridiculous. He was underweight, with no claws to speak of, and someone or something had tried chowing down on his tail. Aside from that, he seemed alright. No wonder he received the nickname Kuzia the Destroyer. That's one kitty with claws, or rather a cat without claws, but give him a break, he was lost in Siberia. Manuela. Let's slow things down for our next pick. Right down, in fact, because we're talking about a tortoise. While these don't look like the most exciting of creatures, there are some extraordinary facts about them. Take Manuela, for example, from Rio de Janeiro. She vanished for an astonishing 30 years, but it turned out she was closer to home than first thought. When building work was happening at the family home during the early 80s, it seems the family pet snuck out the door. We're thinking she snuck out very slowly, but anyway, it looked like the tortoise, a red-footed tortoise, had gone for good. Then all those years later, the trash was put out, including a wooden box from the shed. To people's amazement, they realized Manuela was inside. Apparently she'd been living in the box next to a record player over the decades. How did she get there? No one knows. And how in the half shell did she survive? Again, it's a mystery. The best guess is there were insects to munch and something to wash them down with in the form of condensation. Yuck. Luckily, redfoots eat a whole bunch of stuff, so Manuela wasn't picky. It's known that some tortoises can go for a couple of years or so without a meal. They have fat reserves to draw on, probably because of their sedentary lifestyle. Whichever way it happened, Manuela made it home. Not that she ever left. Talk about leading a sheltered life. Nigel. Next on our list is Nigel, which sounds like a weird name to give your pet. What type of creature is Nigel? A parrot. Okay, getting weirder. But it takes all sorts to make a world. Nigel is on our list because he flew far from home, but also for another reason. Guess what? It's a pretty weird reason. In 2014, Nigel, who's an African gray parrot, was returned to his owner, a British guy living in California. Nigel had been found fluttering around, and a vet managed to ID him by his microchip. His owner was really happy because his precious pet had been gone an amazing 4 years. That's weird, but the really strange part is that Nigel speaks with a British accent. However, keep watching, there's a twist in the tale. When Nigel came home and opened his beak, a whole load of Spanish came out. It was then that the owner discovered where Nigel had been all this time. He'd been living with an elderly couple where he'd learned the language from a Guatemalan grandfather. He and the parrot were close, forming a bond following the death of his wife. Nigel's former owner decided it was best for him to return to his other home, waving farewell to his feathered friend. Sad, but also heartwarming. Aww. Or should that be caw? Petunia. Here's a real head scratcher from 2011. When Petunia the dog was found mixing with the local wildlife near Sacramento, California, she was taken to an animal shelter. They checked her over, saw she had a chip, and looked up her details. The chip revealed the address of Petunia's veterinary clinic. So far, so normal, huh? But there's a twist. The clinic was in Fredericksburg, North Virginia. Petunia's family were pleased to see her. In fact, they were delighted. You see, Petunia had been missing for 8 years. During that time, the beloved pet managed to travel nearly 3,000 miles across states. What happened? Did Petunia decide to go walking around the country like a littlest hobo type of situation? Did someone snatch her and she escaped? Was she abducted by aliens? If only Petunia could talk, then we'd get the lowdown on her incredible journey. Opie. Saddle up for another tale of horsing around. Well, actually, this is quite serious, but don't worry, there's a happy ending. It all started when a lady in Texas went into a hospital for back surgery. Her father agreed to look after her saddlebred pinto horse, Opie, in the meantime. Unfortunately, the horse was stolen, and the family left devastated. A group called Stolen Horse International were hired to look for any suspicious hoof prints. Years went by and all hope seemed lost. Then, a whole decade later, Opie turned up again. But where had he been? He was noticed by someone trying to buy a horse who realized the stallion they were interested in wasn't a regular animal but someone's missing four-legged friend. Opie's rightful owner had moved state to Arkansas and reportedly drove all night to be reunited with her pet. Amazingly, the horse recognized her after all this time. As for who stole Opie, no one knows. The person selling him was in the dark, but mention was made of a mysterious pastor who picked him up by the side of the road. We're thinking that pastor was really a horse rustler, right? Yosuke. We mentioned an African gray parrot earlier. Well, now we're introducing you to another one. How come? 'Cause this is no ordinary parrot. Meet Yosuke, from the Japanese city of Nagareyama. As a pet living in the city, you've got to keep your wits around you, and Yosuke certainly did that after he got lost. Actually, he had a lot to say for himself. Like many parrots, Yosuke was an articulate little feathered fellow. Law enforcement discovered the amazing bird on a roof and brought him down to the station for a cracker. When the vet was called in, Yosuke reportedly announced himself as Mr. Yosuke Nakamura. Not only that, but he had his home address to hand, or rather to wing. This clever creature was then returned to his comfy cage with the Nakamuras. How did he know to say his name and address to the vet? Surely Yosuke is the brainiest bird in Japan, and indeed the whole list. Sayonara! Thanks for watching. Remember to share your pet stories in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe, and see you soon.